even though there are many unknowns about what's actually in fracking waste because of absence of disclosure. The bill that DEEP is bringing forward would be a major stride towards putting Connecticut in the forefront of doing the right thing, which is characterizing it appropriately and, more importantly, subjecting fracking waste to the rigorous hazardous waste regulations that Connecticut has imposed, which are among the strongest in the nation, and we should all be very proud about that. We view this primarily as a public health and safety issue. And the concerns we have about the difficulties in processing this, I think, give us reasonable cause for alarm about how it might be disposed of. As I said, they're trying to recycle more and more of this because they're generating billions of gallons of wastewater. They have to find some place for it to go. We have to ask ourselves the question, what's the more precious resource here, natural gas energy or our precious water supply? And in the case of the Marcellus Shale, which is underneath New York State and Pennsylvania, samples have found high levels of radioactivity, which is really a new dimension in the fracking waste industry. With radioactive materials having a half-life of 1,600 years, that's not a thing where you can say oops and correct it anytime soon. We cannot afford an untoward event relating to one of these wastewater treatment plants where it gets into the groundwater, when it gets into Long Island Sound, where it ends up in a landfill, and then we discover sometime later that it had more dangerous levels than we would have anticipated. I think that we've all read about what's going on in West Virginia, which has very little regulation, and it's obviously very important for jobs in the state of West Virginia. But the health and environmental impacts are horrific in my view. Pennsylvania, which didn't have really very strong regulations when they started fracking activity, has experienced a lot of the same problems, and now they're changing their laws. And I certainly would expect New York State to have much more rigorous regulations. But they're having problems getting rid of all the fracking waste. They can only recycle so much of it at this point. The more and more wells, and sometimes there's a wellhead within a mile of each other. We're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, conceivably, that could be developed on the Marcellus Shale fields, which cover a broad geography. They each generate millions of gallons of water. They're trying to ship it to New Jersey. They're trying to ship it to Ohio. If Connecticut were to make it in any way too easy for fracking wastewater to come here as well, you can bet that they would find a way economically to truck it here.
You know, although there may not be any fracking that can occur in the state of Connecticut, Governor Cuomo, after he wins re-election, may decide finally to allow fracking in the state of New York, which would bring this to our borders. The risk we have is real. Conceivably, millions of gallons of wastewater could come into the state because we have processing plants, 3 in Fairfield County alone, that might be very interested in the lucrative business of processing fracking waste. This poses a genuine health risk for the people of the state of Connecticut and an environmental risk as well. The possibility of this hazardous waste, which is now not characterized as hazardous waste, becoming a problem for our wastewater treatment plants and ending up in our aquifers, our streams, spread on our land, is a real one. And the bills that are coming forward in this session with regard to the banning or regulation of fracking waste are intended to address what might be considered an imminent risk for the people of Connecticut.